Hello, welcome back to another episode of Rep by Rep Strength Podcast. I'm your host, Travis Barrett, and today I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about fatigue. I hope that you have some sort of structured strength training program that you are currently following. Now, while we could spend hours debating and arguing about the different types of methods, there are a set number of principles, give or take one or two, that you could add in there if you like, that would need to be foundational for your strength training program. But rather than talk about principles tonight, let's just spend a few minutes talking about fatigue. So before you jump into a training program, it's important to remember that fatigue is not just acute. So for example, whatever I do today is not just going to impact today. Rather, it's important to understand that fatigue is cumulative. So what that means is what I do today is going to have implications on how I feel and how that's going to affect my training later on within the week, within the month, within the training year to some degree. So when you're laying out your training program, make sure that you are not just jumping in haphazardly to 3 sets of 20 because your buddy said 3 sets of 20 worked really well for him. What you might look at is, hey, let's start pretty conservative. For example, maybe start with 2 sets of 10. See how you respond to that training dose. See how that affects the rest of your training sessions within the week. And then you can come back the next week and in your training journal, obviously you've written down, hey, I did 2 sets of 10 at 30 pounds last week. And you might give that a grade. So one tool I've seen that I really liked from the guys over at Renaissance Periodization is a 1, 0, -1 grading tool. So what that means is after you get to the end of your work sets, you give it a -1, a 0, or a 1. And what those numbers mean is the 1 means that it was pretty easy. I felt like I had more in the tank and I could probably take another set. So the 1 will tell me that I'm going to go up the following week. 0 is kind of like the Goldilocks scenario where the 0 says, hey, that was just about right. I'm going to stay there for one more week, maybe jump up 5 to 10 pounds, but I'm going to keep the volume the same. And then the -1 would tell you, holy crap, that was too much. I need to dial it back by 1 set. Probably dial back the intensity by about 10%. That's just an example of one tool that exists that has worked really well for me when I've used that. Now, there might be alternatives. There might be other ways of coming up with whether you're raising or lowering the volume and intensity within the training program. But it's important to have some type of systemized work in place so that you can go back and look at what you've done in the past, where you're at currently, and then where you would like to get to. So basically what I would do is say, start with 2 sets of 10 with 30 pounds, for example. Maybe the following week you come back. Okay, 2 sets of 10 was pretty easy. Let's see what happens when I go to 3 sets of 10 and I stay at 30 pounds. Basically, you can't continue on this path forever and always, but in the short term, it does work really, really well. And from here, if you do get to a point where you realize it is impacting your training for too many days, so for example, if you do 5 sets of 10 on squats, that is very fatiguing. That's going to make you very tired. So if you get to the end and you do 5 sets of 10, and then you're smashed for the next 3 to 4 days and you flat out can't train, well, that's not good because now we've missed 4 to 5 days of training sessions. So we know that was way too much. We went way too hard and I should dial it back from next time. Or all of this can be avoided by simply starting out a little bit on the lower end because it's always easier to add a little bit at a time rather than go in too hard and then have to simply wait it out or do some sort of active recovery while you wait for your body to recover from that training session. So little 5-minute snippet there on training fatigue and how that looks. Just understanding that there is a difference between acute versus cumulative, and how that's going to impact your training for this particular mesocycle. If you have questions, please shoot me an email or contact me on social media, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. All right, have a good night.